the guy that was in the front of me was a monster. I mean, there was just no rationale for what happened.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mike, and in this video we're looking at the disturbing tale of the Wells Gray Park murders. Are you familiar? If not, don't worry, I got your back. In August 1982, Bob Johnson, Jackie Johnson, and their daughters Janet and Karen went on a 2-week camping trip with Jackie's parents, George and Edith. This camping trip would be cut short by a very disturbed killer, but then the hunt began. This is the story of the Wells Gray Park murders. The three-generation family group travelled to the remote Wells Gray Provincial Park on August 2nd, 1982, a wilderness park located in east-central British Columbia, Canada, around 300 miles to the northeast of Vancouver. They pitched camp at a secluded area near the old Bear Creek prison site, with their grandparents arriving with a truck and camper van. On August 16th, Bob Johnson failed to show up for work at his job at the lumber mill, which was very unusual for him. A week later, he was reported missing to police. The group was reported missing on August 23rd, 1982.
For whatever reason, they seem to have just disappeared off the face of the earth. How could Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, and two little girls aged 11 and 12 or 13 or whatever they were, how could they disappear off the face of the earth?
The search centered on Wells Gray Park, where the family were camping. On September 13, a mushroom picker reported finding a burnt-out car near Battle Mountain Road that was similar to the car the Johnsons were driving. When the Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers searched the vehicle, they found the burnt bodies of 4 missing adults who had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber weapon. In the trunk were the remains of the 2 girls. It was quickly assumed that a local was responsible for the murders. Forensic investigation of the bone fragments found they had been shot with a .22 caliber gun. Locals had seen the family camped at Bear Creek, and a search of the area found 6 spent .22 caliber ammunition shells. The grandparents' 1981 Ford truck and camper and their camping gear, boat and motor and other possessions were missing. During the spring of 1983, several methods were used to try and solve the murders and what happened to the family. In April, the crime was reenacted on site for TV cameras and aired across Canada in hopes that some significant clue would be triggered. In May, police drove a replica of the Bentley's 1981 Ford camper truck to Ontario and Quebec, as over 300 people had claimed they had seen such a vehicle heading east during the fall and winter. The reward for finding the truck was raised to $7,500, and 10,000 posters were sent out to police detachments and post offices across North America.
We're definitely closer, but we still haven't received that piece of information that we're looking for.
But then on October 18th, 1983, 14 months after the murders had been committed, and the trail, it had gotten quite cold by that point. The grandparents' camper truck was finally located by 2 forestry workers near Bear Creek on an old logging road near Trophy Mountain. The spot was only 15 miles from the murder site and 20 miles from where the Johnsons' car was located. It had been burned using an accelerant and was well hidden on the side of a different mountain from where the car and bodies were found. It looked like there had been an attempt to drive it into a gorge, but logs had blocked its path. It now seemed more and more likely that the killer lived nearby, as these roads, they would have been a complete maze to anybody unfamiliar with the area. David William Shearing, who lived locally, was identified by someone who told police that, over a year earlier, Shearing had inquired about how to re-register a Ford pickup and repair a hole in its door. Shearing lived 3 miles from the site of the murders, and the police had never released the information about there being a bullet hole in the car. The RCMP found Shearing where he was to appear in court in a few days on a possession of stolen property charge of a significant amount of tools. He was taken into custody for questioning. Despite his reputation, and he had a bit of a criminal record, Shearing came from a respected family. Royal Canadian Mounted Police detectives Sergeant Mike Eastham and Constable Ken Leibel were convinced David Shearing was guilty from the beginning. Eventually, they got him to confess to his crimes. Shearing had accidentally admitted to Eastham that he had heard the murders were committed at Bear Creek, which was not information released to the public.
About a 3/4 of an hour into the interview, I said to him, I said, "Do you know where the Johnson and Bentleys were killed?" He said, "The old Bear Creek campsite, wasn't it?" I mean, that just about floored me when he said, the Bear Creek campsite, because nobody knew that. I mean, it was something that we hadn't publicized, that it was the actual murder scene.
Eastham managed to convince Shearing to confess to the 6 murders, and he eventually agreed to reenact the murders, and even to turn over the murdered family's possessions. Crucially, he handed the police a .22 caliber Remington pump-action rifle, which was forensically matched as the murder weapon. Shearing initially stated in his confession that he shot the 4 adults as they sat around their campfire, then shot the girls as they slept in the tent, saying he only wanted to rob them. He told the RCMP that he loaded the bodies into the car, drove it by night to the mountainside, and set it on fire using 5 gallons of gasoline. He said he cleaned the campsite, then took the truck camper back to his nearby property, only to burn it later when he discovered how difficult it was to re-register. It later emerged that the real reason for the killings was pedophilia. He said he saw the family when they set up camp and spent several days spying on them. At dusk on August 10th, 1982, he walked into the campsite with his rifle and shot Bob Johnson, then Jackie, and then George and Edith in cold blood. The 2 girls were already in their tent. Shearing said he looked in, told them a dangerous biker gang was around and their parents had run for help. While they stayed in the tent, he said, he loaded the bodies of their parents and grandparents into the back seat of the family car and covered the bodies with a blanket. Shearing said he kept the girls alive for nearly a week, staying with them both at his ranch and at a small fishing cabin whilst repeatedly raping them. Shearing said he then took the girls back to his ranch, and on August 16th, one at a time, he took each girl for a walk in the woods, told her to turn around, then shot each sister in the back of the head. He took the bodies back to the Johnsons' family car, which he'd hidden and put them in the trunk. He drove the car to a secluded spot and burnt it. On April 16th, 1984, David Shearing pleaded guilty to 6 counts of murder. In his 10-minute summation, Supreme Court Justice Harry Mackay described the crime as a cold-blooded and senseless execution of 6 defenseless and innocent people. A slaughter that devastated 3 generations in a single bound. What a tragedy. What a waste. And for what? He sentenced Shearing to life in prison with no parole for 25 years. This was the maximum possible penalty for second-degree murder and the first time in Canadian history that it had been handed out.
Most people were thinking that David Shearing should have the death penalty, which seems appropriate.
I know how I'd feel if it was one of mine.
Put him in an electric chair. To hell with him.
Oh, I think there should be capital punishment if he was the one that done it.
It's not like he just killed 1 person, he killed 6. Molested 2 girls. That's a sick person.
In September 2008, David Shearing was up for parole. The National Parole Board ruled that he still had violent sexual fantasies and hadn't completed sex offender treatment and was not ready for freedom. His second application in 2012 was also rejected.
Still a monster. He hasn't changed. He's still a monster. In all our family's eyes, he's still the monster.
Shearing applied again in 2014, then withdrew the request a month before the hearing. In the meantime, online and paper petitions garnered 15,258 signatures, urging the parole board not to release him.
Never heard he was sorry. And it took him 30 years to say it. Well, to stay there another 30 years to actually feel how sorry you really are.
Family members also appealed for relief from the agony of reliving the tragedy and campaigning against Shearing's release every few years. He now goes by his mother's maiden name, Ennis, and is married to a woman he met in prison. Well, that's the end of the Wells Gray Park murders. There's not really any lesson to be learned, no hope for the future in this one, just some sick shit that happened. I think the next video will be something light, maybe a conspiracy captain or something. Thanks for watching. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed the video, because it's quite disturbing. But I'll see you in the next one. Mike out.